near lit my hat on fire. Happy Monday to you, if such a thing exists. I'm smoking the Morgan Bones with Maltese Falcon from 2012. And it's a fine blend. Some folks said they couldn't hear me too well last week, so I'm trying to do better at that. I have been unable to this point to find the charger cord amongst the other 957,000 charger cords in the house. I've yet to be able to find the charger cord for the microphone, so you're just going to have to live with it until I find that charger cord. It's in there somewhere. I don't know where, and I'm okay with that. Hope you had a nice weekend. I don't care. Part of mine was spent at a funeral. A Southern funeral. If you've never been to a Southern funeral, you ought to give it a try. I've been to far too many of them. This one was of the more interesting. It was a relative, my dad's first cousin. My dad's first cousin, he was in his mid to late 70s, I think. And he had been in poor health, so it was expected. This particular relative and I had the exact same first and last name. We were both named after my grandfather, who was his uncle. His name, my grandfather and this cousin and myself are named Douglas, and then we had the same last name. It is very strange to sit in a funeral and hear your name called out as if you were dead. Now, I know, I'm not a Junior or a Douglas III or any of that kind of stuff, okay? But it's very strange when you're sitting there and they refer to Douglas so-and-so as if they're dead. As if I'm dead. Well, we know that Douglas is now in heaven. My ears pop up going, am I? If this is heaven, I'm in trouble. So I had to readjust my thinking. And not try to get scared every time my name was brought up. When we got there, this was done in a funeral home sanctuary, not in a church. So when we got there and we walked in, you walk in from the back of the sanctuary, of course. We sat on the front row. Well, when we walked in, we noticed at the back, there were two guys dressed in overalls and a t-shirt under the overalls, work boots. And I see that the cicadas have awoken. Anyway, so there's two guys sitting at the back of the sanctuary with guitars. So you figure, well, it's a Southern funeral. There's going to be some Southern hymns. So I'm sitting on the front row. I've got a cousin to my left and a cousin to my right. And the service begins with a pastor, I guess, who used to be the pastor of a church that Douglas attended years ago. And he talked about how well he knew Douglas at the beginning. But then he started telling stories, which was basically reading the obituary that had been in the local paper. Because he started every story with, well, I've been told that Douglas liked horses. And I'm like, well, you say you knew Douglas. Douglas rode horses all of his life. If who had to tell you that? If you knew him, you should have known that. I'm told Douglas liked to dance. Well, yeah, that's pretty well known. You should have known that without having to read the obituary if you really knew him. So he goes on his eulogy, bringing up my name. And then he's done after, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. And you hear the guitars start playing at the back of the church. And so you're thinking, I don't know why this button keeps coming unbuttoned. I'm trying to show you all my chest hair. Don't get excited. Anyway, you hear the guitars start playing at the back, and you're thinking, oh, a Southern hymn. And to some, it probably is a Southern hymn. But within the first 3 or 4 chords on the guitar, you realize what the song was. And my cousin, who is to my right, who is also a musician, looks at me, and I look at him, and he whispers, "Are they playing Tennessee Whiskey?" And indeed, they were playing Tennessee Whiskey and singing Tennessee Whiskey in the funeral service. Not the more recent Chris Stapleton version, but the original George Jones version of Tennessee Whiskey. So now the 3 of us, my cousin to my left, my cousin to my right, and myself, are all singing Tennessee Whiskey on the front row and trying not to laugh. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Tennessee Whiskey. I like Tennessee Whiskey, and I also like the song. I wasn't sure that that's what I would have included in my funeral, but that's just me. So we sing Tennessee Whiskey, and then a young pastor gets up. The guy's probably in his mid to late 20s. You can tell he's relatively new at being a pastor, but apparently this was the church that my cousin had started going to before his health declined. Well, this guy, he probably weighs 135 pounds, really skinny, bald head, got one of these almost Fu Manchu type goatees, got a deep barrel voice, and there's no joy, no smiling. It was a sermon talking about, which is fine. You expect that. But it was a sermon about what you have to do to get to heaven, and how he knew Douglas was in heaven, and what everybody else in the room needed to do to get to heaven if they hadn't already done what they needed to do to get to heaven. Not that you really have to do anything. Getting to heaven is not based on works. I'm not going into a sermon here. Anyway. But there's a certain amount of joy that comes with being a person of faith. This guy, I couldn't find any joy. It was all, you have to do that. And then a couple of times he got all excited, and you thought he was going to go Pentecostal and start dancing behind the podium, but he didn't do that either, thankfully. So he goes on for about 15 or 20 minutes, and he's done. And you hear the guitars coming again, and now you want to know, are you hearing a southern hymn, or what's coming next? It was not a church hymn. It was some other country song that Douglas apparently liked. I had never heard it before, so I didn't sing. None of us did. And Douglas was also a veteran, so there was a couple of members of the local junior ROTC there to unfold the American flag, which was up at the front of the sanctuary on a table, and then present it to Douglas's wife. And then there was a really, really bad pre-recorded version of Taps played. They also had Douglas's cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and his hard hat from his logging days, because he used to be a logger, he used to be a long haul truck driver. They were all up at the front of it too. He was cremated, so his remains were up there too. And the other thing that was weird is most Southern funerals, when you're done, you're going to eat. There was none of that. There was a short visitation with the family after the service, and then everybody just went home. No food, no banana pudding, no fried chicken. But whatever. That's how I spent most of my Saturday. I do not think I'll have Tennessee whiskey in the playlist for my funeral. Anyway, I hope you folks have a good rest of your week. You folks be well, be humble, be grateful for all that you have. I'll see you again soon.